Hello, bonjour, Annie. Welcome to this Science North virtual star party. My name is Oletha. I'm the staff scientist for Spaceplace and the Planetarium, and I'm joined by Lucy, who is
Hello, everyone.
science communicator for the Planetarium. We will be your hosts for this evening. So we are streaming to you from Sudbury, Ontario, also known as Swakamak. We are on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Atibmishing, Anishinaabe, and Wanapitei First Nation. This land sits on the Robertson-Huron Treaty area. If you're joining us live, please share your location now and your questions and comments throughout the presentation and night sky tour. Whew. All right. So our special topic today is cross-quarter days. And we're going to be also showing you where to look for the Eta Aquirids meteor shower. All right, so today is a cross-quarter day. It's known as May Day, and it's celebrated internationally, and it has been for a really long time. In a modern context, it's also recognized as International Workers' Day. So we celebrate this and other cross-quarter days. But what's cross-quarter day, and what's the connection to astronomy? Well, humans have tended to closely watch the cycles of the sun, and they've set celebrations at key points in that cycle that we perceive from Earth. So the path that the sun follows across the sky, it changes for us because the Earth is tilted. Now, what I mean to say is its axis of spin, so right here, is tilted relative to the plane of its orbit around the sun. So as a planet orbits around a star, kind of describes a plane in space. And so it's sort of like a flat disk in space. And as the Earth is spinning, the axis that it spins on is sort of tilted relative to the sun. So I'm gonna use my lamp to kind of show you this on a bigger scale here. Okay, so right now, on May 1st, we've gone past that point in time where the Earth wasn't tilted towards or away from the sun. So as that little bee, that little planet is orbiting around the star, this little planet, its north pole here stays pointed at the North Star. So as it moves, it stays pointed that way, right? So at one point it's kind of like this relative to the sun, but as it travels all the way around, you get to a point in orbit where it's now tilted away from the sun. Okay. All right, so keep that in mind. So here we are. We're on May 1st, and we've gone past that point in time where the Earth wasn't tilted towards or away from the sun. So that was the spring equinox, March 20th. And we're halfway between that point and the summer solstice, which is June 20th this year, where the northern hemisphere, where we are in Sudbury, in Swakamak. So we're halfway to the summer solstice, June 20th, where we're pointed towards the sun. And of course, we celebrate the summer solstice, and that's National Indigenous Peoples Day, right? And back in March 20th, that's pretty close to Easter, April 4th, right? So we celebrate spring, we celebrate being partway to summer with May Day, and then we celebrate the summer solstice. And that cycle continues around, and if you look across cultures, we see these celebrations falling on the equinoxes, which is when you get equal day and night. equinox, meaning equal night, and the solstices, where we're either tilted towards the sun, we're getting really long days and short nights, or we're tilted here in the northern hemisphere, tilted away from the sun and getting really long nights and short days. And of course, that winter solstice falls on December 21st, which is very close to Christmas, October 25th. I'm thinking of the next thing I want to say. December 25th. Another cross-quarter day is October 31st, Halloween. So anyways, lots of holidays, lots of reasons to celebrate. And now you might understand a little better why celebrations are placed at certain times throughout the year. And there is some science in your everyday life. Now, before I pass it over to Lucy, I wanted to share a cool thing that I learned at the last star party and debunk a common misconception. And they kind of go together, so that's cool. So we talked about apogee and perigee last week. And so apogee is that point in an orbit where a celestial body is the furthest away that it can be from the body that it's orbiting. So orbits tend to have a spot that's a bit closer and a spot that's a bit further away. So when it's further away, we call it apogee, and that starts with AP, like apart. So this is what Linda from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada Sudbury Centre, who joins us. I'm not sure if she's here yet, but this is what she shared in the comments last week. So apogee, AP, apart. Perigee starts with P, like proximal, meaning nearer. And I find that easy to remember because Proxima Centauri is the closest star to Earth. So apogee and perigee. Okay, now that kind of ties into a common misconception, which is that we have summer because the Earth is a little bit closer to the sun. The sun's heating it up more. But what you just learned now about summer solstice is actually because we're tilted towards the sun. We're getting more direct sunlight and longer days. And so that's actually why we're having summer. For us, during summer, Earth is actually near to apogee. So it's further away from the sun during the summer for us. Okay, now over to you, Lucy. Let's take a look at that night sky tonight.
Thank you, Aletha. Before we head into the night sky, I did see that we do have a comment, a question, saying that if you're in the southern hemisphere, isn't it the opposite there? And that is very true. If you're in the southern hemisphere, if it's, for example, as we were just talking, this summer solstice, it would actually be the winter for the southern hemisphere, while it's a summer in the northern hemisphere. For example, if it's the spring equinox, it would be the spring for the northern hemisphere. Well, it would be actually the fall for the southern hemisphere. So it's the opposite. So let's head over to Stellarium. Stellarium-web.org. The link is actually in the description. We have here a web-based program you can use to navigate the night sky, help you find certain things and certain celestial bodies, or even just constellations. So let's start off with the a very easier constellation to find. It has a lot of bright stars, so I find it's always easier to start with the brighter stars. And if we go looking towards north, so right now I'm looking towards the north, fairly high up, we have this grouping of bright stars. If you've been around for the last few streams, you'll notice this one. It has a pot area and a handle. So we have the Big Dipper. It will look much bigger outside. Here on the screen, it doesn't look very big, but outside it will look much, much bigger. And it is part of a constellation. So if we add a few extra stars, some stars here for a head, and there are more stars for some legs, we have Ursa Major, which is the big bear, a bear with a really big tail. And what's really fun about Ursa Major, or just the Big Dipper, there's a few stars in there that's really interesting to look at. So if you just look with the naked eye, which is your eyes, if you have a good enough eyesight, you'll get to see a few stars that are actually, well, two stars. There's two stars where you would think there'd just be one. So the stars here. So one off from the end of the handle, we have two stars. If you look at this just your eyes, you should be able to see those two stars if you have a good enough eyesight. Back in the day, before we had really any ways of telling how good your eyesight was with different charts and whatnot, this would be a common test people would do to see if you had really good eyesight. If you can see these two stars, your eyesight's pretty good. Now, if we zoom in further though, so if you have a pair of binoculars, you'll actually see that it's just not those two stars. So we've got Mizar and Alcor, but if we zoom even more, Mizar here, you'll get to see that it is a double star. So it's kind of like a double double. I guess it's kind of Canadian, which is kind of fun. So we do have Mizar and Alcor right here, right the star next to the one at the edge of the handle of the Big Dipper. And it is a very fun thing to try to find with binoculars. But from here, let's do some star hopping. We'll jump from star to find other constellations, other grouping of stars. So by taking the two stars at the edge of the pot of the Big Dipper now, so all around this side here, follow the imaginary line it makes outwards from the pot, we'll get to see this star right here. A trick you can do is if you take your arm out and then you kind of measure the distance in between the two stars at the edge of the pot, you can count that distance about 5 times, 4 or 5 times over, and you'll get to find Polaris, which is well the North Star. It's a very special star, as Olathe was mentioning earlier. Polaris, being the North Star, is right above the North Pole. So it's right above the point where the Earth is spinning, the axis. So it's always pointing towards the North Star. No matter what time of night it is, no matter what time of year, you'll get to find that this star will always be near to right above right above the North Pole. So as we speed through time, so by going to this bottom button here where we've got the date and time, we get to fast forward and take a look at what's going to look like later. So I just jumped an hour, so nearly 11 o'clock. We saw that some of the constellations moved, but the North Star is still there. So if we try that again, if my computer, haha, there we go. Sometimes it's just a little slow. But if we fast forward, we'll see that all the stars will be moving around it because we're seeing it from the Earth. It's really the Earth that's spinning, and it makes it seem like the stars are moving. But with the Earth spinning, we'll have the apparent movement of the stars. They'll kind of be spinning around the the North Star. So we've got Polaris, that'll always be above the North Pole, which helps you find where north is. It's a very good navigation tool. So let's head back to where we were at right before 10 o'clock. So at this point, it's getting darker out. You don't want to go outside right after the sun sets. You don't get to see any stars just then. The sun is setting later and later, though. So tonight it sets at around 8:35, if I'm not mistaken, or 8:34. And you have to wait at least an hour after that for it to start to really get a bit darker. So almost 10 o'clock, you'll get to see quite a few stars if you're far enough away from any towns and cities where there's a lot of light pollution. So if you're in the middle of nowhere, you'll get to see these lovely stars. And, well, Polaris happens to be part of its own grouping of stars. We've got some stars here and over here. These two stars at the edge of the constellation are brighter. They're not super bright, but I usually can find those. These other ones, they're not super bright, so it's a bit harder to find. But this makes Ursa Minor, the little bear. Again, a bear that was drawn with a really big tail. So before heading over and finding some more constellations, Olathe, do we have any questions?
Thanks.
So were there any questions that was mentioned in the chat? No?
Yeah, we've got a quieter group today.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine. But I see there's some really fun extra information in there from Linda. Thank you very much, Linda. All right, so let's head over to, we're going to head over and look towards the west. So, oh yes, the ecliptic. I will show the ecliptic, Linda. Let's take a look. So from the button up here in the top left.
Oh, Lucy, I do have some good news though.
Yes.
Colin McIntyre just subscribed, so that's pretty awesome.
That is exciting. All right, so you can click on the ecliptic.
Thanks,
Now we
Colin.
have the ecliptic line. Thank you, Aletha. Yeah, so the ecliptic here is the line or the pretty much showing the path of the sun as it goes through the sky. So as the Earth goes around the sun along that plane, as Alyssa was mentioning earlier, the sun seems to be going in front of these constellations. So this is the ecliptic line.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Yes.
So yeah, so when we're looking up at the night sky, we see all these little bright dots, and how do we know which one is a planet and which one is a star? So this is a question from Colin. And the trick is to look for the twinkling. So when you're looking at a planet, it's actually much, much closer to us than the stars are, right? Because the planet's right in our own solar system with us. And so it's actually making a bigger dot in the sky than the stars that are further away. So they're making a little tiny dot in the sky. And our atmosphere, the molecules in our atmosphere can actually interfere with the light that's traveling to us from that big dot and that little tiny dot. And it interferes way more with the little tiny dots. So it actually makes it disappear and reappear and kind of move around. And that's where you get the twinkling of the stars. But the planet will just be steady. It won't twinkle. Okay, back to you, Lucy. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you very much, Aletha. Yeah, thank you for the question. So, what I often helps me also to find planets is that planets will be near the ecliptic line. They are a little off, but they'll be within 5 degrees from the ecliptic line because all the planets travel along this kind of like plane around the sun. They might be off just a little bit, but they'll all be around there. So they'll all travel close to this ecliptic line. And the ecliptic goes through the zodiac signs. That's how they came up with the zodiac signs, depending where the sun was, what constellation it was in front of. That was your sun sign, your zodiac sign. That was true a few thousand years ago, but there's a really neat thing that the Earth does. It kind of wobbles like a top, which means that eventually the sun is off by a little bit. So instead of, for example, for me, I'm Cancer in July, near the middle of July, but at that point, the sun isn't quite in Cancer anymore. It's still in Gemini. It's off just by a little bit. So we have Mars here. You can find Mars. I'll kind of make the ecliptic line disappear for a bit so we can see without it. So looking towards the west, we don't get to see Orion really anymore. It's setting here right below the horizon. But way up here, we've got these two bright stars. They're known as Castor and Pollux, and they're part of a constellation. The other stars aren't as bright, but it makes something like this. So we've got Gemini, the twins, up in the sky. So Mars happens to be in Gemini right now, and it's not too far. So you'll get to find Mars and Gemini in the
So
sky.
Lucy, I did get a question here. I don't think we did talk about it, but so you can see Betelgeuse is red and Mars is red.
Yes.
So how do we tell? That was it's on the ecliptic, right? How we tell the difference between the two?
Yes, however, there is a reddish star along the ecliptic that was mentioned last session, and I think Linda was talking about it in the comments. there is in Scorpius during the summer a super giant red star that's known as Aldebaran. It makes up no, not Aldebaran.
Antares.
Yeah, no, she's talking about Aldebaran. I just looked aside and I was looking at that. I was like, no, not that one. Yeah, Antares. So Antares is called that because, well, Ares is the Greek version of the god of war when the Roman version is known as Mars. Antares means not Mars because a lot of people mistake it for Mars. It's a reddish dot along the ecliptic, so it made a lot of sense people would mistake it. But as Letha was saying, stars are prone to twinkle, especially near the horizon, while the planets would not.
So that's the main way. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Was there any other questions before we show some more things?
No, carry on, carry on.
Wonderful. All right. So we've got Gemini the twins, and we've got a few zodiac sign along the ecliptic. Another one that has some fairly bright stars would be this one here. It has kind of like this reverse question mark and a triangle. This one I do really like finding it. It's Leo with a lion. So we've got the mane of the lion and the tail back here. However, as I mentioned before, my zodiac sign is Cancer. It has no bright stars. I usually have a lot of trouble finding Cancer the crab. If you kind of look at it, it's strange how they connected these stars to make Cancer the crab. Sometimes, though, they just kind of think of this as kind of like the pincers of the crab. So it really depends. Some of the constellations you can kind of tell, but others you need a lot of imagination to try to figure out.
Hey, Joel, welcome.
Yay! And then another way to find, for example, Virgo. Let's go back to star hopping. It's so much easier to find constellations by star hopping. So we'll go back to the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper. So the Big Bear and the Little Bear here. In between the two, we've got these stars that kind of snakes around the Little Dipper, curves back, and then these four stars make up a head. So I love finding this one, known as Draco, which is either a dragon or a serpent, but it's often nowadays drawn as a dragon. And well, we have actually we're starting to see Hercules. Hercules is a interesting one to find. It has some brightish stars, but it doesn't really look like a person. I always have fun in thinking like it looks like a squished spider, but with a lot less legs. However, it is Hercules up in the sky. Another way to star hop is if we take the handle of the Big Dipper.
Oh, Lucy, what's that?
Yes, we do have, this program's really neat. It shows when satellites are going by. So we've got starlings kind of going by.
Did anyone
Depending.
see the Starlinks when they just got launched? Did anyone see the big trains that they made in the sky? That was pretty cool.
That was really neat. Sometimes, depending on how the light reflects off of them, you can see still like that train, but they're a bit more spaced out. It's really neat.
That's cool.
Yeah, so all depending on how the satellite's reflecting light, sometimes they get really bright and it looks really strange. Like, what is that? And then it dims again. So it's just reflecting a lot of light at that point.
That's cool. Yeah, I've seen those iridium flares. Sometimes if you see something really bright, it's like a fast satellite that's just catching the sunlight and then it passes.
That's
and
so neat.
Linda clarified too with Betelgeuse, I guess, because it's a pretty big star, I guess. Yeah. If it's not close to the horizon, you wouldn't notice the twinkling for Betelgeuse. Yeah. So then you have to go by the ecliptic.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. So, so let's go back to the handle of the Big Dipper or the tail of the Big Bear. We can arc with it. You can make an arc down to Arcturus. It's a fun little trick to use. Arcturus happens to be part of a constellation known as Bootes. He's a herdsman. So he's herding these dogs right over here. And then from there, after you've arced to Arcturus, you can spike down to Spica. So you just kind of go down over here. Right now it looks like it's going sideways, but depending on the time of year, it sometimes looks a bit more vertical. But after Arcturus, we spike down to Spica, which is a bright star. The brightest star in Virgo, the maiden. So we've got another zodiac sign. So we've got our zodiac signs along the ecliptic in the sky. So Taurus is just setting with the Pleiades riding on his back. So it's a grouping of stars. The Pleiades are gorgeous to see, but it is known as a winter grouping of stars. Taurus is a winter constellation because you get to see Taurus very well after the sunset throughout the whole winter season. But now that we're getting much further on in the spring, Taurus is very low. Instead, in the night sky, we'll get to see Leo and Virgo, and just starting to rise up after 10 o'clock, we'll get to see Libra, which are the scales.
So I have a question, Lucy.
Yes.
This is from Johnny Landry, and his daughter Kaylee is wondering where Leo is. So you can definitely see Leo right now. Let's bring Leo into view for
Totally
Kaylee.
see Leo. So as I mentioned earlier, if you can find that kind of like reverse question mark and
And
triangle
which
here.
direction are we looking now, Lucy?
Hmm?
What direction are we looking?
We are looking towards the south. So it's above the southern horizon, and it's actually underneath the Big Dipper. So if we zoom out, there we go. We zoomed all the way out. So if you look above your head, as I mentioned in past streams, the point right above your head is known as the zenith. And, well, Ursa Major is pretty much right above your head. It's at the zenith right now. And below that, towards the south, we've got Leo the lion. And he happens to be above this really long serpent. It's a sea serpent known as Hydra. So as you notice, a lot of these constellation, there's quite a few that are mythological creatures coming, especially from Greek stories and traditions. So a long time ago, different cultures would come up with different constellations. But there is this one person, this one Greek, Claudius Ptolemy, in one of his book, wrote down a lot of these constellations. So the Europeans decided to use that as a basis to start off and kind of make an official map of the night sky. And afterwards, people eventually added more constellations between the 16th and 17th century, at which point people were traveling towards the southern hemisphere and seeing new constellations. Naturally, the people who lived there already had constellations, but these Europeans, it was new for them. So they had added to more constellations to have the official, what we know as the modern constellations. We have 88 constellations in the sky.
That's very cool. So
Yes.
do scientists still use constellations?
They still do, not as much to tell stories or to kind of show lessons through stories and legends and whatnot, but to kind of help us determine where things are. It's like if you think of a map of the Earth, there's different countries, different boundaries, and you can tell where something is just by what country, province, state, or city they might be in. So they would use that same idea for the night sky, depending if we want to try to find an asteroid or a comet. If we know in what constellation they are, it's much easier to try to find it and narrow it down that way.
Ah, okay. So things are named after the constellations that they're in.
Exactly.
Cool. And so it's not anywhere near Kaylee's. Well, if I'm thinking Kaylee might have wanted to see Leo because that might be her sign.
Yes.
Which means, oh, look at that. My goodness, I have to clean my camera.
There's kind of like a glare happening on your camera right now with the light.
The sun. Anyways, but so you can't see your astrological sign on your birthday, right?
Oh, sadly.
So then I could say, like, Kaylee, I know it's not your birthday today.
Yes.
If I knew that Leo was
Leo's up in the sky. The sun's not there right now.
Yeah, so isn't that kind of cool? You see your constellation on the opposite of your birthday. I'm going to clean my camera. Carry on, carry on.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, and you can see your constellation, especially quite a few months before your birthday. If it's right after your birthday, like a few months after your birthday, you can see it, but it would be up really early in the morning instead. So if you're an early riser, you might be able to see it if there's no clouds in the way. But I know for myself, I am usually asleep at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, so I usually wait until like it's visible um, later on in the year, depending on what I want to take a look at. So that way it's visible in the evening instead. So we can take a look at. We also have, well, near Hydra, we do have Crater and Corvus. These are fun little constellations. So we've got a cup and a crow up in the sky. But as you can see, they're not very bright. The Corvus here is not too bad, though. Right next to Spica or Virgo. Now, let's take a look at a few other constellations, but to see some more, we have to go a little later at night. So let's fast forward a little bit. Um, if we wait another hour, for example, if Libra is a bit higher up in the sky, and an hour after that, there we go, midnight. Oh, now we're starting to see the one I was talking about. Not that one. That's M4. Antares. Nice reddish star near the ecliptic. So yes, a lot of people would mistake this one for Mars. So we've got Scorpius starting to rise up over the horizon. But if we wait a little later.
Oh, we just have a question. What direction was the cup and crow in?
That was towards the south. So okay, now it's at 1 a.m. So now it's more towards the southwest.
Okay.
But it was a bit more towards the southeast at around 10 o'clock.
Right, because each night we're seeing the stars rising in the east and setting in the west, just like the sun. Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of the fun constellations that change in seasonally would be towards the south. If we spin and look towards the north, we get to see the Big Bear year round because it'll just kind of spin around the North Star and always stay up in the sky. But the ones that changes season to season, in the northern hemisphere at least, it'll be towards the south. So after Scorpius, we'll get to see, if anyone knows their zodiac signs, after Scorpius, we've got Sagittarius up in the sky. So if you want to see Sagittarius right now, you do need to wait till 3 a.m., which is really late or really early. If you're really that dedicated, that would be amazing. I'm usually asleep though.
Night.
But we do have the moon right now. It is near its last quarter. And it is in Sagittarius tonight. So if it clears up, if you're somewhere where there's no clouds and you want to get up really early before the sun rises, you'll get to see the moon and also a few other planets. So we can see Saturn just starting to rise up and Jupiter. So we've got Sagittarius here, Centaur, half man, half horse with a bow and arrow. And we've got Capricorn, half goat, half fish. And we've got Aquarius here. He's a water bearer. He pours water. But what's really neat of the for Sagittarius, it does have some nice bright stars. So Scorpius did have some nice bright stars, and as we mentioned, we have Antares. But for Sagittarius, there is these stars here. This kind of like triangle here that makes a spout, a lid, and a handle with the base here. So it looks very much like, if we use a bit of imagination, a teapot. So kind of like how we have the Big Dipper, which is an asterism. It's a simple formation of stars that's part of a constellation. Well, here we have the teapot. It's an asterism that's part of Sagittarius. The other constellation that makes up Sagittarius aren't really that bright, so that one's a bit harder to find also, for if you want to find the other stars for it. But we do have Saturn and Jupiter, and as you can see, they're near the ecliptic. And they're in
Lucy,
Capricorn and Aquarius. Yes.
do you mind showing the galactic center?
Ooh, the galactic center. Yes. So, as you can see, we're really early in the morning. If you do want to see this after the sunset, you have to wait till the summertime. You have to wait till summer to
It's
be
in
able to
summer.
see this.
We could even like move into summer time-wise to, no.
We
It would
could.
come back.
However, it's here right now
Agreed.
at 4 a.m.
Yes.
But regardless. So yeah, so we've got Sagittarius with his bow here. We've got Scorpion right over here. And I don't know, if I make this disappear, you can kind of see here this kind of like haziness going up above us right here. So this here is known as the Milky Way. It's our galaxy. It's some stars really far away in our galaxy that we don't have eyes good enough to see the individual stars, but we kind of see that hazy light coming from them. So we've got that the Milky Way galaxy going up above us. To see it better, if you're far from cities, there will be very little light pollution. However, if we also got rid of the atmosphere, which would not be a good thing, but if we got rid of the atmosphere on the program, you get to see it really well, which is
Yeah.
gorgeous. But if we take kind of like that spout of the teapot or that arrow for Sagittarius, it points towards the galactic center. It points towards the center of our galaxy. So our galaxy is a barred spiral galaxy. It has arms kind of going from the center, and it's well, kind of like on a plane, and with arms coming out of it. So I think of it kind of like a plate. It's not very wide, but it's like really big if we take the plate kind of like looking it towards the front. But because we're inside the galaxy, we're taking a look at it from the side, so we only see kind of like how thick it is. But there's a lot of like stars and a bit of debris up in the space and gases and whatnot, so it's blocking some of the light. But we have been able to tell with a lot of our satellites and technologies that we were able to figure out that towards this direction is the center of our galaxy. So you can use Sagittarius to find the galactic center, the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way. So is there any other questions, Aletha?
Yes, we do have a question from
Yes.
Katrina Tisdale. Hi,
Ooh.
Katrina.
Hi, Katrina.
Is Sirius part of a constellation?
Sirius, yes. We would have to go back in time for that. Sirius is a really bright star in the sky. I just have to have my computer
And then
not lag. There we go.
we should probably show folks where to find the Eta Aquirids meteor shower.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up.
Okay, so if we, this might be a little too early. Ooh, yes. As you can see, if you go outside past 9 o'clock, it's still not really dark enough. Can't really see a lot of stars, but you can see a few. However, if we just fast forward a little bit, we've got Orion the Hunter here. We've got the 3 stars that make up his belt, his shoulders, his legs just below the horizon over here. We've got even his head and some stars for his arms. So Orion the Hunter is here, and if we take that belt of his to follow it downwards, we can find Sirius, which is a really bright star. But it is part of a constellation that sadly is sinking towards the horizon, but is part of Canis Major, which is the big dog. It's a big black dog. And he is Orion's helper. And above him, we do have the little dog, Canis Minor. And in between the two, no bright stars here. This one's a very hard one to find. But we have Monoceros, which means one horn. So it's a unicorn. There is a unicorn up in the sky, which is a lot of fun. All right. Was there any other questions before we jump into the asteroids?
No, I don't think so.
Wonderful. So for the Eta Aquarius, it takes the name Aquirids from Aquarius. So if you recall, I was showing you guys Aquarius, but we get to see it at 4 a.m. So let's fast forward through time. Ooh, I see a question. When will Orion disappear below the horizon? Tonight, that will be probably close to 11 o'clock. Yeah, look at that. Around 11. We'll get to see just past 11, Bill just going below the horizon, and then we'll have his arm kind of be down below the horizon by 12. But yeah, in the next few weeks, he won't be visible anymore. Thank you, Amy, for the question. All right, so let's fast forward again and go to yeah, 4:30 in the morning seems good. We've got Saturn, we've got Jupiter in Aquarius. So the Aquirids meteor shower. It's a well, a shower of meteors. It's a what commonly known as shooting stars. But we're going through a section in space where there's a lot of debris, and it's has meteors going through, streaking through our atmosphere. We call it a shower because there is enough within a certain amount of like within an hour to be considered a shower time, to consider having
I
enough
think
meteors going by.
at the peak this year, we might get up to 50 with the Eta Aquirids. Yeah,
Nice.
50 per hour. So it's not super frequent.
So when do we get to see the meteor shower, and when's the peak?
So the peak is the night between May 5th and 6th.
Ooh.
And yeah, and you do need to get up quite early. It's like about 4 o'clock in the morning. So in the chat, in the comments, and in the description, we put a link to timeanddate.com. So they're a great website for learning about these things. And they have a cool little app that lets you see exactly where to see it and at what times for your location. So we're talking about Sudbury, but if you're watching from somewhere else, then that's a great tool for you to use.
Awesome. Thank you, Aletha. So yeah, so the Earth is going through this section in space that has a lot of debris, so it's usually from a comet. Aletha, do you recall which comet left the trail of debris for the
Yeah,
Eta Aquirids?
this one's actually Comet Halley. So we also get, Comet Halley is also responsible for the, what is it, the Orinids meteor shower as well. So we see it, yeah, twice a year.
Exactly. So yeah, so Eta Aquirids, known for Aquarius because the meteor showers will seem to be kind of coming from Aquarius. It'll be streaking out from this direction. So if you take a look outside at night, it should be coming from the east, southeast area, and it'll be streaking up through the sky from that direction.
We just had I guess the Heathen Coalition wish us a happy Beltane May Day. So Beltane is one of those many celebrations that happen on a cross-quarter day.
Thank you very much. Happy Beltane and May Day to everyone too.
We also have a question. How small is this dust? Is it like sand particles?
Very small.
Yeah.
A lot of times they are sand particles or smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so if you take a look outside on the peak day, May 5th, 6th, you'll most likely get to see some meteors streaking by, which would be very, very exciting. You can make a wish.
All right, well, thank you so much for that lovely tour, Lucy. Appreciate it very much, and thank you so much to all of you who joined us this evening. We're so glad that you could, and those of you who are watching the recording, thanks for sticking around. If you liked this content, please do remember to like and subscribe so you can see more. Next week, we are going to be joined by Sarah, who is a science demonstrator for the planetarium, and she's going to be showing us some Anishinaabe spring constellations. We'll also be showing you where to find Venus. So thank you, merci, miigwech, and keep looking up.
Bye, everyone.